Part 8. The Post-2021 Acceleration. What Workers Saw, and Why No One Has Investigated It, by Canadian Citizens Journal. Something changed after 2021, and every worker saw it. Across long-term care homes in Canada, a quiet shift began around 2021. Workers noticed it first, not because of news reports or policies, but because residents began deteriorating in ways they had never seen before. What changed was not the residents themselves. What changed was the speed of their decline. Staff began witnessing sudden, sharper deterioration in mobility, balance, cognition, memory, mood, stamina, wound healing, swallowing and feeding ability, resistance to mild illnesses. Residents who once walked independently now needed walkers. Residents who used walkers now needed wheelchairs. Residents who were mentally sharp now appeared confused. Residents who were recovering suddenly slipped backward. The acceleration was too widespread and too consistent to dismiss, yet no national investigation has ever asked why it happened. The pattern was the same across Canada. It did not matter which province or what type of facility. Private homes, corporate chains, non-profits, assisted living, government-funded long-term care, dementia units, all experienced the same shift. Residents declined faster than staff could keep them stable. Nurses with decades of experience said they had never seen deterioration unfold this quickly. This is not rumor. This is national testimony. Increased resident acuity collided with the worst staffing crisis in long-term care history. Just as residents began declining faster, staffing collapsed. Facilities now had fewer workers, more complex conditions, less time per resident, more medical instability, more behavioral issues, more emergencies, more falls, more preventable infections. Before 2021, long-term care was already strained. After 2021, it entered full-scale crisis. This collision, rapid decline combined with fewer staff, became the engine pushing residents toward palliative status and MAID eligibility. Workers were blamed for systemic collapse. Instead of responding with more support, many facilities increased pressure on workers. Staff were met with discipline, verbal warnings, guilt and blame, unrealistic demands, threats of job loss, mandatory overtime. Personal support workers and nurses were collapsing from exhaustion, while residents were collapsing from preventable decline. When the system could no longer stabilize residents, they were classified as palliative. Once labeled palliative, MAID entered the conversation. Workers felt the funnel forming long before anyone acknowledged it. The rise of unexplained decline and failure to thrive. After 2021, charts began using vague terms to describe resident deterioration: unexplained weakness, poor intake, failure to thrive, declining mobility, recurring infections, sudden confusion, rapid cognitive change. These terms are not diagnoses. They are placeholders for problems no one is investigating. When these phrases appear repeatedly, residents begin sliding toward dehydration, weight loss, more falls, increased pain, worsening infections, emotional withdrawal. This decline is eventually described as irreversible. That label triggers palliative classification. Families were not told the whole truth. Families often heard calm explanations such as, "Your mother is slowing down. Your father is not bouncing back. The decline is natural. Age is catching up." Inside the facility, workers were saying, "This is not normal. This decline is too fast. They were fine a few months ago. Something changed. This does not make sense." Families received a softened version. Workers dealt with the real one. Staffing collapse forced personal support workers into medical roles they were never trained for. As covered in Part 7, after 2021, many long-term care homes functioned with only one nurse per building. Sometimes no nurse at all. Personal support workers performing medication passes, untrained staff interpreting medical changes, workers responding to emergencies alone. This is clinical collapse. Medication errors increased. Delayed treatments increased. Falls increased. Infections spread faster. Residents became unstable more quickly. Once unstable, they were reclassified as palliative. Workers noticed the link. Systems pretended not to. Staff whispered about it in hallways and break rooms. They whispered because they were afraid to speak openly. They said things like, "Everyone is going downhill. This is not normal aging. Why are they all declining at once? Why is no one investigating?" Something is clearly different, but management refused to acknowledge patterns. Inspectors did not ask questions. Provincial ministries provided no explanations. The official narrative blamed the aftermath of the pandemic. Aging Pre-existing conditions, workers knew it was something more. Rapid decline directly increased MAID eligibility. This is the part almost no one talks about. When residents decline faster, they reach MAID criteria sooner. MAID eligibility is based on suffering, loss of function, loss of mobility, chronic pain, inability to perform daily tasks, emotional distress, frailty, irreversible decline. When decline accelerates, regardless of the reason, eligibility expands with it. This is why post-2021 decline matters. It is not just medical. It directly shapes how quickly residents become palliative, how many qualify for MAID, how many families are told there is no hope, how many residents lose the ability to fight, how many doctors see MAID as the more compassionate option. The faster the decline, the faster the pipeline moves. The most important question: why has there been no investigation? Canada has launched no national inquiry into sudden cognitive deterioration, sudden mobility loss, unusual patterns of decline, repeated infections, medication instability, increased falls, increased frailty, increased long-term care mortality after 2021. This country investigates food labels, toys, and playgrounds, yet refuses to investigate a nationwide health collapse in seniors. Why? Because investigating would require confronting long-term care underfunding, staffing collapse, policy failures, mismanagement, corporate neglect. The explosion of MAID, decisions made between 2020 and 2022. Silence is easier, and the system has remained silent ever since. The post-2021 acceleration is not a theory, it is testimony. Workers witnessed it, families felt it, residents suffered through it. This chapter is not speculation. It is lived experience across every part of long-term care, a sector where faster decline, decreased staffing, increased complexity, increased suffering, increased palliative labeling, increased MAID referrals all rose together in the same period across the entire country. This is not coincidence. This is a pattern. And patterns are never accidental.